All right. Can you hear me? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
You're coming through good.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right,
Everybody
awesome.
hear me?
Yeah. All right. Well, we can let's begin, and let's just kind of start this off by discussing the some of the things that came out of the hearing. Let's.
Well, we have a couple people that were there. I'd love to get some of their perspectives on this at some point.
happy to
You
chat
got Darcy.
about it. Yeah, I'm happy to chat about it with you guys. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. right now. And yeah, yesterday was pretty monumental. It was really interesting what happened, you know. I've seen a lot of complaints from like the actual UFO community, and people get a little bit frustrated that it's not something we already haven't heard. But if you've been studying the UFO phenomenon for as long as most of these people have, everything seems old. But the fact is that, you know, 2 subcommittees finished a House oversight congressional hearing, and the committee members asked the panel, 4 experts, a series of questions about UAPs and UFOs, indicating that there's a bipartisan national security topic that was worthy of further investigation. And that is these things that have been observed by credible pilots, Navy men, citizens of the United States and beyond in many countries around the world, of what we call UFOs or UAPs now. And
Yeah. So
you know,
really, what was shocking to me that came out, and I was not expecting, was to hear that there was injuries that finally was disclosed. I've known this for years. I've known this since 2013. Personally, myself, I have been in this field for a while, kind of researching, and I've spoken to whistleblowers. I met with U.S. Major General Albert Stubblebean in 2013, the former INSCOM head, and he had quite a lot to say, and basically told me that in the 1980s we built defenses against these things. And yeah, I was really shocked to hear that the injuries part had come out. And I know in 2015, John Burroughs had his whole incident with Rendlesham Forest. He was given medical aid. You want to speak on that, Nick? Nick Pope? You have to unmute yourself.
you
Are you
might
there,
have to
Nick?
speak to that issue. You might have to speak to that issue, it sounds like.
Yeah, so basically the Rendlesham Forest incident was with Colonel Holt and John Burroughs, and they came into contact. Pennison as well. I forgot him. But basically, what ended up happening was they came into contact. Oh, Nick just left. He's connecting again. So they came into contact with a UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it now, and it ended up causing him to have heart issues, and he ended up getting medical aid for those issues.
Pardon me, it's Nick here. I think I've
managed
to join. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we got you, Nick.
Okay, yeah, well, it's sorry about that, but yeah, and apologies if I'm duplicating anything that just got said, but absolutely, John Burroughs and a number of the other Rendlesham witnesses suffered medical harms that they attributed to their encounter with the Rendlesham UFO. And this was officially confirmed, actually, in a now declassified British government intelligence assessment of UAP as a whole, the phenomenon, not any specific case, in something called Project Condign, where the final report said that it might be postulated that the Rendlesham incident was a case where the witnesses were exposed to what they called UAP radiation, quote unquote, for longer periods of time than normal. And just the fact that we would casually say UAP radiation, like implication, that's a thing, in a document classified secret UK eyes only, is very telling here. And to cut a long story short, this was handled through Senator John McCain got involved, Senator John Kyle got involved, the VA got involved, and there was a settlement when it was pointed out that this intelligence assessment existed. So these physical harms are absolutely real. It's a very serious side of this, and it indicates perfectly the reason why this is not some sort of fringe conspiracy topic. It is a serious front and center defense and national security issue.
I read once that it was considered, his injuries were referred to as like non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. And I know I had heard of that before, so it's like that's like a known issue. So to know that that's what he had going on is pretty significant, I think, in relation to the UAP encounter.
It is, absolutely. Now, I have to be very careful on this because of HIPAA and all the associated medical confidentiality issues. Obviously, some people have disclosed things about their own conditions, but it's very difficult remembering who's said what and what's in the public domain. So with apologies, I want to err on the side of caution here. But the UAP task force, Arrow, and many of the people associated with all these programs are extremely familiar with this case.
I will jump in and say, when I spoke to John Burroughs about this situation, he did state that the VA would not actually cover his heart condition at first. And that's because his record of serving under the Air Force as a security personnel was wiped after the Rendlesham Forest incident happened. And because of that, they couldn't say he was able to have his medical benefits covered. So Senator John McCain had to step in. A team of people were helping John Burroughs with this. And when Senator John McCain stepped in, he ran this up the flagpole because he realized for sure he had the pay statements and the actual history on paper that he worked there. So John McCain got his work history reinstated, and then he got his health benefits covered for this heart valve issue.
Were they wiped or classified, those records?
Wiped.
Typical wiping.
It's a very interesting situation. The real hero of this story, or one of a few real heroes, is Cheryl Bennett. Now, she was the staffer in Senator McCain's office who did so much work to try and uncover this. And she said, look, every senator will have somebody in the office that does the veterans issues, somebody that does the immigration issues, somebody does the Medicare issues. Cheryl Bennett did all the kind of VA veteran type issues. She said to me, and a number of other people, that she had never seen anything like this before in all her time dealing with all these issues, in terms of how many kind of obstacles that the DOD and others put in her way, and all the strange things about John Burroughs' medical records that, as I say, she had never seen before. But Cheryl Bennett is the real hero here, and a lawyer called Pat Frasconia, who put in hundreds of hours of pro bono work on John's behalf and on behalf of some of the other witnesses.
Now, Rendlesham happened in the 1980s, and in 1976, I believe, was when Cash Landrum happened, right?
Cash Landrum was 1980 as well, actually. It was literally
that was George Wheeler. That was a George Wheeler case. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah. But Cash Landrum, which again was a case where it seemed that the witnesses were exposed to some sort of anomalous radiation, what we now call UAP radiation.
Right.
And that was literally just 2 or 3 days separate from Rendlesham.
Right. Right. And then you had the Brazil Calores cases from 1977 to 2003. And then in India, most people are unaware of this, but in 2002, in India, there was a case where it was blamed on bugs and people died. There was 7 deaths that was associated. There's an article that says alien kills 7 in India, and they blamed the deaths on bugs. You can't make this up. And India, there was another case that happened in 2004, and then again in 2006, and then just recently in 2024, just this year, there was another flyover that happened where the Indian authorities, they scrambled jets, and yeah, I mean this has been happening worldwide. It's not just the U.S. It's not just isolated events. These are kind of waves of attacks that have been taking place over the years, and to see that come out in Congress, I mean, what are you guys' kind of reactions of finally seeing the that written where it says in the
I
Immaculate
mean,
Constellation document, it literally says dire threat.
we have this in the congressional record now, which I think is great. And I'm hoping we're kind of getting to the point in the conversation where experiencers are going to have more of a voice, right? Because they're the people that have been dealing with this and gaslit for decades, right? And that said, like we do have Whitley up here, and I know a couple or a year or so ago you were. I know you mentioned that you were going to speak at Seoul, and they said it wasn't the time. Have you heard any rumblings about that?
Well, I'm going to be at Seoul again this year, and I have a lot of friends at Seoul. It's not an unfriendly situation for me at all, but the problem is this, and it's going to get more true as time goes on. Nobody knows how to deal with the close encounter witnesses in this community. Certainly not in the congressional space. And Seoul is. I mean, I had very frank conversations with uh, Gary Nolan about this, and he said to me that there were members of his community that would not be comfortable with hearing me speak because I am a close encounter witness. And frankly, what we have to face is that they're not here to fly around in the skies. They're not here, in all probability, to exclusively concentrate on cattle, if that's part of this. It's us. And if it's not us, I think we should be extremely embarrassed, frankly. But we got to they got to get a handle on it. How do they include this part of the whole experience in the disclosure process? And when you think about it, you got a major problem. This problem is this: the United States Air Force, in fact, all air forces in the world, have the same mandate. It is to protect their people from threats from above. That did not happen here. Back in 1986, when we hadn't, I was beginning to research this and in exploring the possibility of writing a book, which eventually became Communion. And David W. Webb showed up in our lives and came out to the cabin as very sweet, very wonderful man who happens also to be, if you look David W. Webb up on Wikipedia, you will find that he was consulting. He was a major guy in the space sciences and consulting with every alphabet there is. And he was very frank with me about that. And he said, I'm here to try to help you. And also, he hoped, I think, to get into contact with the visitors at the cabin, which didn't happen. But he introduced me to an allergist, and I was given epinephrine injectors to have all over the house uh, because of the terrific allergic reactions that would come when they drew near. My point here is the government knew then about this and also that it couldn't do anything about it. I don't see how we go there in the disclosure process. And I understand very well why the close encounter people are kind of being kept on the sidelines, because how do you say this has been going on for 80 years? People have had sexual material taken from their bodies and we didn't tell them, and we can't do anything about it to this day. How do you say that?
It kind of reminds me of what somebody said on a podcast recently. They used the phenomenon is indigestible because it opens up so many different issues. It's like a can of worms.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Uh-oh.
I
I
think
don't know what
one
that
of the
was.
issues,
I'm in
The
the
one of the
timing,
issues with,
timing was impeccable.
yeah, it
yeah,
sure
something to
was.
do with,
It,
I think something to do with the secrecy of this issue is the fact that the DoD and other military powers around the world realize very early that they can't control the visitors, and therefore they must keep the secrecy. And therefore, the people, if they don't know how vulnerable we are to this, they can't feel the fear. They can't feel like we're not the top of the food chain.
Also, they can't
Well, it's a
Well,
governing.
they can't resist, because when this happened to me in '85, I had no idea whatsoever that anything like that could be possible. I hadn't thought about flying saucers since I was 12, and then suddenly here this comes into my bedroom in the dead of the night, and uh, we're helpless. However, if
right.
I had known that this was a possibility, conditions around that country house might have been very different. Uh,
So
I might have
I
been,
got a question for you. I got a question for you, Whitley.
yeah.
Were you at the 1992 MIT conference with John Mack and David Jacobs?
No,
Were you one of the abductees
I
there?
was intentionally excluded.
Really?
Yes. Oh, I've been excluded from lots of things. I'm being excluded from something right now, I'm pretty sure. So, uh, uh, it's it's going to be hard. People have, and it doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't care really. I'm thinking that uh, this is just going to be very hard to get our heads around, and people feel threatened about it by it on a lot of different levels. Obviously, people in the military and Defense Department, they feel very threatened by the existence of these close encounter witnesses. Uh, and you saw that reflected in the hearings. There were a couple of things that were mentioned just in passing. Two words: hybrids and telepathy show up somewhere in those hearings. I heard
I
them, and I
saw
can't
that.
tell you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw that.
these
Um,
two words, behind these two words, is another world. Believe me.
I think Lou Elizondo, when he was asked about have we had communication with these craft or these beings, the NHI believe he tried to clarify uh, what is communication. There's verbal communication, and then I believe he talked about telepathy because that's a known, as many know, in the space occurrence amongst experiencers in abduction.
He was. He also referenced and said that there's nonverbal way of communicating with military assets, and when you split a flight pattern, I mean that's a form of aggression. So yeah,
And that's also not to mention like the baiting programs that they talked about that recently came out too. And there's actually Russian cases of them trying to communicate with lights with the phenomenon as well.
yeah, right. Yeah, so they were baiting UFOs or UAPs, whatever you would wish to call them. They were baiting them with nuclear weapons and nuclear material, and that was also taking place apparently in 1987 with the UFO Working Group. And the UFO Working Group, according to Stubblebean, they drafted weapons, and one of the weapons that was produced, that I was told, was called Trestle, and it was produced by BDM International and McDonnell Douglas. And there's actually a contract to this weapon, and it's basically an EMP. And apparently, the first time that we shot these down was in the late 1990s. After this weapon was produced, I think it was 1995, 96, somewhere around that time period. But it's very interesting to me that we start shooting these down deliberately in the early 90s. And it seems like the swarming of naval ships started happening more and more frequently in the early 2000s.
You know, I have to say that shooting first and asking questions later in a situation like this, when you're obviously up against somebody who, to say the least, has got many exotic means of responding to your aggression, is not the smart way to go about it. It's
I fully
I
agree.
agree.
It's ridiculous.
I've heard Chris Mellon, I think, say that like shoot them all down or something. Like he was pretty aggressive with his words on that. But I'm like, I don't know. I agree with you completely.
it's because of what they know.
Whitley, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We're talking about disclosure here. After you came out with your book, Communion, it seemed to have broken down the floodgates of kind of an awareness of a presence that people had felt, but not really been able to articulate. And more witnesses came forward. It seemed to have caused its own kind of cultural disclosure.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I had no idea that was going to happen, or I would have been frozen solid. I would never have been able to finish it, write it. But
Yeah, no pressure.
right, the what happened was the face on the cover of the book, those eyes triggered memories in millions of people around the planet, and a lot of people also who had what they thought were dreams of like nightmares realized when they saw the face it wasn't a nightmare. It really happened. It happened to this guy too. And I don't think anyone really understood that, except maybe someone somewhere in the publishing company, somewhere in the there's something weird happened when the book was published. It had a publication date, and all of a sudden the publisher, and they would never tell me why they did this, sent books out to every bookstore in the country with no notice. The boxes just showed up without warning before the publication date, as if they had been afraid that. And I talked to the president of the company and I said, "Why did this happen?" And he said, "Well, we just felt we needed to get it out right away, Whitley, and I can't go into it any further than that." So maybe someone was
Really?
about to try to stop it.
Well, that would make a lot of sense, but at the same time, I mean, these kind of things seem to kind of form out of fate, right? These events unfold, and suddenly, we're on the run again, right? We're
Yeah.
we're we're pushing forward, right? Do you think there's going to be multiple types of disclosures? A cultural one, a militarized one, a government one,
Well,
or are we? Go ahead.
that's an incredibly important question. And this goes by layers, deeper and deeper and deeper. The first level is where we are now, where there's already been, in effect, disclosure, because now there are congressional committees taking it seriously. There is enough information out there, enough people have seen UFOs for the average person to think, yeah, there's something going on, obviously. Uh, the second level is finding out the struggle that the military has had in trying to deal with this and trying to control things like its incursions into our airspace. And, th- they have purposely, the visitors have purposely entered restricted airspace intentionally in order to provoke us. No question of that in my mind at all.
Right.
So then the next level, and this is the level that, of course, interests me, is cultural and religious. Religions are going to have to play a big role in this, in the West as in all over the world, because this has to fit into the way we understand reality. And that we're going to end up in the West where we've sort of abandoned religion. We're going to end up going back to those old stories to recast them in a new context so that to help us understand this, because this has been perking along in human culture for thousands of years, probably for the whole time. It blew up when the atomic bombs blew up, because whoever's out there, this presence, realized we could kill ourselves, we could commit suicide, and it
And they
began to
might.
act at that moment.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There may be like an investment involved there, right? Because they've been seemingly interacting with us and sort of like nudging us along for a long period of time. If you take all these stories, you know, to have value. But I do think that like in the end, the truth of this coming out will actually reinforce a lot of religions rather than like take away from them. So I think in the end, it's a good thing. But I also think that like the slower drip of some of this information would probably be helpful for like getting some of those people who are very, you know, holding on tight to what they believe is reality,
Yeah.
help them transition.
Well,
Well, most of the people I know in the military who are involved in this think it's demons. And I
Right.
right.
always say,
I've
hey
heard that.
guys, let's
I've heard that from Stubblebean too. Yeah.
right. Let's hold on here. It might not be the Middle Ages anymore. Maybe we need to look at this a little differently. Not that they're not dangerous, but the old stories might not fit this particular situation as well as we would need them to.
Is that more due to the evolution of what these things are, or our understanding of what's going on behind the scenes?
That's a darn good question.
I can answer that. It has to do with the Collins Elite and everything that happened with the Collins Elite. A lot of the occult stuff. I wish Jesse Michaels was here to kind of dive into the occult stuff with me more. But a lot of the NASA, like the early NASA
Like Jack
alumni,
Parsons?
like Jack Parsons, yes, and
Right.
they were involved in a lot of occult activity. But also
Absolutely.
the same being that is on Whitley Strieber's communion is the same being that Aleister Crowley kind of
Oh, that
showed.
drawing of his, like
Yeah,
the
the LEM
lamb.
lamb. Yes,
Yep.
correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
Very
that
interesting.
was pointed out to me, and you talk about creepy. That was a very creepy discovery for me, I can tell you.
So
Also,
I just wanted to say we got Galactic Troubadour down there. I think he had to step away for work, but he works with Jesse, and he's super knowledgeable on the occult. He goes deep. So I highly recommend
okay.
we get him up here at some point.
Yeah, no, yes, for sure. Bring him up.
Well, the occult connection between UFOs, science, religion, I think it was kind of playing the background role for a long time, and now it seems to be taking more of a front or center stage role. People are noticing it. People are connecting the dots, and you even have people like Lou Elizondo going on podcast or whatever and showing like esoteric symbology, right, with the circle, the
Yes.
square, the triangle. The people that are involved in this disclosure push, the one even down to what we saw yesterday, they seem to have an awareness of it. I can't speak to their beliefs or their preferences, but they have an awareness of not only the occult but possibly the history of it. Even down, I mean, I would say similar things have been said from Gary Nolan if you read between the lines, but he goes back at the Salt conference and talks about how a lot of people believe these things are affecting our culture, and that they've been part of the beginning of these like major religions around the world for thousands of years. They're part of that push. They're, you know, talking to people in certain ways to create these social changes. They're trying to affect culture. They're trying to manicure it and bring it to some kind of reality. What that reality is, I have no idea. But these are some of the best minds in the field talking about some of the most advanced information you could find on the topic, both private and public, and these are the conclusions they're coming to. So I think there's got to be some kind of blending between, or at least, unveiling of this more esoteric history in ufology, and even to some extent like modern science when you go back
I
to
think
I
that
think
the
Genesis.
there's
word
Right.
blending, I think the word blending is a super good, usage in this context because we have sometimes people have a tendency to look at it as either scientific or a religious based phenomenon, whereas maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle.
yeah, and
Also,
I
if
think
you like
that.
view
Oh, go ahead, Neanderthal.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that a lot of what's like talked about with the religious and occult aspects of this, I think to be honest, most of it's like a label game. Because if you look at all of the human religions, almost every single one of them without fail is admittedly started from some sort of contact with some sort of non-human intelligence. Like almost
Right.
every single one of them. And the other thing about it is too, is like, what's the meaningful difference between demon, angel, interdimensional, extraterrestrial? Like it seems like just these names get put on things and people try to have this secret knowledge of stuff, but like at the end of the day, what are their intentions and what are they, you know what I mean? What are their capabilities? Like I think that like by and large this is a massive distraction. I think it becomes a problem with people like you talk about, like the Collins elite, where you start to take like biblical belief systems and start acting upon those realities. You know, the talks of those guys like trying to prevent the biblical apocalypse and stuff by keeping this secret. That's when it becomes a problem. But I think like we really need to try and get past this stuff.
100%.
how do
I
we
couldn't
do
agree
that?
more. And like demon and angel, that's just translating to positive and negative experiences that have
Agreed.
happened.
Agreed.
Okay, and
Absolutely.
also one thing I think that's really important to remember is like who's to say or know necessarily that the phenomenon is any one thing. To grok it down to be all negative or paint with a really, really large brush and say it's any one thing. Um, as we know, the universe could be teeming with life, and it's a gigantic place. So who's to know if there's only one source of NHI? I
Well,
doubt it.
yeah. Well, I mean, so there if there's life out there, right? There's probably multiple forms of different life, but we do have documentable that there is at least one hostile form of life that is attacking humans, and it's been taking place over the period of like 80 years, and it's very well documented. But nobody has kind of given any transparency on all of these attacks, and it's always kind of brushed under the rug, and it's called lightning, it's called this and that. I mean, but these attacks are very brutal. And speaking on like cattle mutilations and stuff like that, there are actually cases of human mutilation, and it's something that a lot of people don't like to speak about, and it scares people. I get it, but it's happening. Like there are human mutilations happening. There are people that have had their eyes removed, their lips removed, and their sex organs mutilated, and had all of their blood drained from their body without any blood left at the crime scene.
I know a
We
certain.
cannot
Oh, go.
we cannot do that.
I
I was going to say we cannot do that. That's not a
no.
serial killer doing that. That's something
I can
else,
get
and
into
it's
that a
very
little bit
scary.
if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I know
Please.
of 17 cases that took place in Brooklyn in the 90s, and I know of only 17 of them. That's not to say that there are more cases. I don't know any details about the people except these. A, they were street people. In other words, there were never, to my knowledge, anyone taken who wasn't basically a streeter. In other words, they had no associations, no friends, etc. They were.
That's even more horrifying. Wow. Holy shit.
Here is what
That's a bombshell.
here is what happened. They were taken. They were mutilated by having their eyes removed, and a slit opened up in their just below the C1 vertebra in a particularly important place, and the spine was then brutally destroyed with, I mean, like something as brutal as just a wire or something being pushed down it. The individual would then have been semi-conscious and dying, and they were then taken down into depth in the ocean, so deep their lungs collapsed and they were drowned. Then, and
Wow.
here's the bizarre part, they were returned to approximately the places where they had been taken up in the first place. It like, someone was saying, okay, this person isn't just going to disappear. We're letting you know what happened. And this case, I'm telling you, is so, you're never going to get any more information about it. Then there was the Todd Seas case, which Linda Moulton Howe investigated in Point Mountain, Pennsylvania, where he was out on a four-wheel drive vehicle on a path in the mountains, and he didn't come home. And the vehicle was found sitting there. There had been a light in the sky. We tried hard. Some farmers initially reported this light, but then they wouldn't come forward. I was involved in it in this. Linda was involved, and some others. They would not come forward. The farmers. We never were able to find out who they were. Then we found that uh, that Todd C's body, apparently in a mutilated state, although no one would tell us this. Linda was, in fact, thrown out of the town. Uh, was found a few short distance from his home in a wetland. So yeah, I think this does happen. I don't think it's
Yep.
commonplace, but it does happen. I
Well, you
think,
have the
and
Colares case in Brazil too. I
oh yeah,
mean,
exactly. There's a
Colares,
lot of
the
cases
India
in
case as
Brazil.
well. The India case as well in 2002. The the brutal mutilation of one of the guys there. I mean, his stomach was completely cut open, um, and it was just a really grotesque scene. And there's also a case that happened in Russia in either the 1930s or 40s. So yeah, I mean this happens a lot more than people think, and I was very shocked to see that Lou in his book only included the Colares case. I don't know if he was basically forbidden from talking about
He was only
kind of
approved for the things that were in the book, so they
right.
probably gave him a specific incident that he could say.
Yeah, but I was thinking because it happened in 2002, so I was thinking, if they looked into Colares, I mean, they definitely looked into the India case that happened in 2002. And there's also cases that happen in Africa or South Africa as well.
Yeah, and in Brazil recently in the last few years.
Brazil, Argentina, Peru. I mean, it's starting to really pick up, and nobody's giving answers to anything about this. And
I wonder if like us paying attention to it more increases that. As fucked up as that sounds.
I think this is really complicated, and uh, fortunately, this business of mutilating and destroying people is not commonplace because there's many people have been abducted and returned to their homes in the United States and Canada, Australia, France, a few Italy, a few other countries.
right,
It's been reported. It's interesting that Brazil is a different. It's like almost like somebody else has control over Brazil, because there's where people really get brutalized, but not here. I mean, yeah, I was scared and hurt, but they weren't. They weren't
I
doing that to
oh
me.
sorry. Yeah, no, I think Brazil's a unique case. There is the anomaly down there with the magnetosphere. I wonder if that specific condition allows for those UAP to interact more down there, or that type anyway.
I hope that's it, because if they turn out to be, if that turns out to be the rule and what's happening in the rest of the world the exception, we are we're in such deep shit, man.
Well, couldn't it be
Whoa.
the proximity to nature or a jungle or a forest? Right? There's this.
That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. It seems to be like the mutilations and the attacks actually take place in remote villages in like forest in the middle of nowhere. Like
Well, the forest represents
Except
it's
Brooklyn's
symbolic
not a
of
remote
something.
village.
Well,
That's true.
Brazil has always been a little bit more forthcoming about these fucked up cases. It's very possible that these type of things are happening here more often, but then we just cover it up.
The
But
other
in the
thing
Coloris
too,
case,
yeah, you could factor into all of this. What if it's true that a former presidential power or the DOD had some kind of agreement that American citizens were not to be, mutilated and treated as such, but then when they get outside of the United States and they go to places like Brazil, there's no agreement.
That has crossed my
that's
mind.
an incredible, scary thought to think about.
That would be so fucked.
that was a great
Another
point,
Somebody,
scary
Justin.
somebody
angle
just like
of this,
throws fucking Brazil under the bus. Jesus Christ.
I
another
will.
scary angle that a lot of people don't like connect with the mutilation phenomenon is like it's most recently talked about in popular culture by Michael Masters is the extraterrestrial model. Like if you look at one species that we know has these behaviors, it's humans. And so like if you look at the way that the extraterrestrial model fits a lot of the data as to like the secrecy and why they wouldn't want to show themselves to us if there was some sort of risk of altering timelines, and also this sort of thing, like there's numerous reasons that they would be studying like the food supply and the humans of our time if they're trying to fix things or trying to mess with things.
Can
Yeah,
I
you
saw you.
like
common.
summarize the
I,
extraterrestrial model just for the room?
I was gonna say I saw you raise your hand, John. So you can go after he explains that.
Yeah, so it's just the extraterrestrial model, like Michael Masters' theory is if you look at like he's a biological anthropologist, I believe, if I'm saying that right. But if you look at like what's mostly reported as this gray species, his theory is this is what humans are going to look like if we keep evolving down our current level. And
At
so like
thousands
it
of years
That's
from now.
post
correct,
singularity
yeah.
humans. That's us in like 50 years. Um,
But that,
I just
Ostap's
wanted to
but
got
say,
dry humor.
I just wanted to say, Galactic threw up a quote from Secret Machines War up here. Jacques Vallée offered the opinion that cattle mutilations may be just what they seem to be, acts of terrorism. They seem to have no other purpose. The intention is to terrify the human population, to demonstrate the
right.
capacity for total control and the willingness to perform hideous acts of a secret and mysterious entity, a bogeyman. I do think
Sounds
that's a
very
good quote.
demonic.
I
Well,
Yeah, that
mean,
definitely
so
these
does.
far
are
they've
loaded
basically pissed
terms.
off ranchers more than anything.
I think I avoid using terms like demonic or angel or, all these things that have loaded context, right? Because I
But that's
think
the arc.
a
I
lot of
totally understand.
people, well, a lot of people have a certain idea of what that is. And there's going to be
Hmm.
some people that are going to outright reject that concept altogether and reject accepting the phenomenon as real because it
The
has that
same
connotation.
couldn't the
And
same thing
then
be
there'll
said
be
about the word
people.
alien?
It's
There will
also like
also,
an
yeah,
old world.
totally, which is why they rebranded it to non-human intelligence. So I think that there's an ambiguity that's useful there that helps a lot of
Totally,
people
but
accept
just
it
paying
and
respects
not
to like
just reject
the
things or be fearful of something just because we don't understand it.
And a lot of people reject religion, outright anyway. I mean, like I said, like even Gary Nolan lays this out, right? Like we used to call them gods, and then gods of the forest, and then God, and now we don't really believe in God anymore, but we believe in technology, so they present themselves as technology, right? And the idea that these things might have been involved in the beginning of some religions throughout history. That's why I choose to include those phrases and those terms, because it seems to
Yeah,
be
but
an
those
old
are
world
old
awareness.
world words. There's kind of like a psyop to control the masses,
But
right?
Well,
even
what
if
I
you look
would
at
say
Diana
is this:
Pasulka's work,
if
you're
you
like,
use those
you
words,
can't
I would
Guys,
recommend.
John has had his hand raised. Let him speak, please.
All right, go for it, John.
Hey, can you guys hear me? You
You're
can.
good,
Okay,
Yeah,
John.
cool.
yes, we can hear you.
All right. This is I just wanted to just quickly say I want to thank Mario and you for lending your platform to this topic, because everyone up here on the panel and around here, there's all the usual suspects. We talk about UFOs 24/7. We're so deeply involved. We know so much, and we have these conversations every day with each other. But there are literally almost 4,000 people in this space that maybe they're just coming here for the first time, and they're learning that, what, this is real, this is happening. And this is, we go back to the hearing, because I was at the hearing. I was in the room yesterday. There was other people up here on the panel, Mello, but I just want to let the people in the room to know, if you're really interested in this topic, okay, the people up on this panel are the people you need to follow. I mean, we've got legends here. We have Nick Pope, we have Whitley, we have Mellow Demon, we have Hollywood, Missile Man, OSAP, I mean, Dove, Neanderthal, I mean, Joe Merja, Astro. I mean, we are in here. I call spaces the front lines of disclosure, because we are in here in real time discussing these things, debating, going back and forth, sharing real time news, and updating each other. And we're going back and forth. And I just wanted to thank you guys for including me, including this topic in your platform, and once again, just mention the fact that these hearings are making a huge difference. I know that a lot of those of us deeply in the know were a little disappointed that we didn't get like a huge amount of brand new stuff. But for most people, everything said yesterday was brand new.
Totally agree.
Correct. No, I definitely agree with you, and I think that people are kind of hoping for new information because they've been studying this for years. And no problem. I've been involved in this topic since I was kind of briefed on this in 2013 by U.S. Major General Albert Stubblebean, and I use that word loosely because it wasn't really a briefing, as I'm not in the military. I was a civilian, and I met with a former INSCOM head, and he basically spilled the beans on everything that was going on, and yeah, I was very kind of shocked to see, like I said yesterday, that the actual harm from UAPs, UFOs came out, because I did not expect to see that. And when I saw that, I was like, all right, I actually kind of have to go a little bit more public here. I have another account where it's completely censored, and it's an anonymous account. And I've been talking about my story of meeting with Stubblebean, and I've written articles years ago on Steemit and Activist Post, The Mind Unleashed, and some other alternative press where I discussed this topic and went a little bit into some of the stuff that Stubblebean told me. But I've never kind of gone public with it in audio or video or anything. So I wanted to do that and actually come forward. And I want to discuss with you guys Blue Book and the side project that was going on with Blue Book by Dewey Fournette. It was known as Operation Interloper. And if you guys don't know, interloper means unwanted invader.
Dude, that's a good deep cut right there. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I talk to this a little bit?
Yeah.
Always,
No,
Whitley.
for sure.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
I've been on.
Holly has her hand raised as well. I just noticed that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
let's just
Okay, I don't know how to raise my hand. I have no idea.
let Whitley go.
I
He's
talk to
VIP. He
documents in
doesn't
the
join
back.
spaces that often.
No, well, obviously, since this is the first time.
It's an honor.
Okay, Holly,
Welcome aboard,
I will
Whitley.
be brief. I will be brief. Uh, what what is happening in my life in the I know lots of experiencers, obviously, and people who are engaged in, as I am, in ongoing relationships with this presence, and I don't really characterize it any more than as a presence, because we don't really know what it is. Michael Masters is absolutely right about that, and his in any case, the trajectory for me starts, apparently it happened in my childhood, then I forgot about it. Not an uncommon phenomenon, as I understand it. Then suddenly I have this terrible experience. I'm beat up, really, my head was totally screwed up by it. It was a really rough experience. But now looking back from where I am today, I would not give up my relationship with these beings for anything. They are so valuable to me, and I cannot imagine them hurting me. Absolutely, it's unimaginable. I've been, so, and yet, am I talking about the same ones that are screwing with people in Brazil and doing these horrible things in Brooklyn? I can't answer the question. I don't know. And this is kind of where we are all with this. We're kind of we're kind of feeling our way, but at least one thing I want to keep front and center is it's not all threat. End of story.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's not. And I think that there's multiple different beings. I think John Lear's famous briefing in the 1990s. I mean, if you think that he's telling the truth, and you think that when he brought Bob Lazar to the scene, that that he's not being a disinfo agent, then his famous briefing. I mean, it discussed. I think it was 9 different types of beings, and or maybe more. And he said that some of these beings are involved in human mutilation, and the rest are benign and are indifferent. Was the words that he used. There was another person that people might be familiar with, Philip Schneider. He came public in the 1990s, and he talked about 9 different beings that were hostile to humans and that harm humans. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it is all threat. I think that there's multiple different types of species, just like with any other type of animal here on Earth. I mean, there's certain animals you don't go near, right? But they're not necessarily they're not necessarily there to be a threat to us, right? So
But
they're just
I know
trying to eat or
people that
something
are
like that.
experiencers that, like, they had a traumatic experience, but then afterwards they became a virtuoso on a musical instrument or something, or like they, invented something amazing, right? And like sometimes
Right.
it also gives people insight, right? And forces people to look inward, and people can get something positive out of it. So while I am with you that overall I believe that we deserve consent when it comes to these issues, right? But um, it doesn't have to be purely fear based. I just think that we need to understand it better. We need to have more context to integrate this better into our world. Because when you don't have any context for something, first of all, then automatically it's scary, right? Because it's automatically bad because we don't get to consent to it. But when we are open and we're able to talk about it with each other, it doesn't have to be 100% bad if the experience isn't like harmful to us. You know what I mean? Like this could be something that's just like a
Right.
part of our world that uh, is we end up becoming comfortable with, that is welcomed or something. But that said, like I'm not there yet because we need context, we need openness, and we need like a dialogue going on to understand that we're safe and stuff.
I got a
Right,
quick
Holly.
question.
I was going to say Holly had her hand
Oh, go
raised
ahead. Yeah.
for quite some time.
Hello, everybody. Wow, what a great space. It's so good to see friends and colleagues in here. Um, for me, I'm an experiencer and I will always advocate for witnesses and experiences. And just picking up on what a couple of people have mentioned in this space about the harm and the threat narrative and we don't have much context on the whole for this. There's one area that really, really pushes me forward is the stigma. And how do there's a lot of new people in this space, there's a lot of new people coming to this topic. How do we as a community, how do we as people who are involved in this topic, how do we support the reduction of that stigma? Because the stigma seems to flow through all channels. And, I'm so privileged that I speak to witnesses and experiences every single week, but yet the stigma remains so strong that it's like forbidding people to come forward. And how can we continue to have open dialogue when that stigma hangs over people so badly? And I just wonder if Whitley had any comment to that. And I'm so glad to see you here, sir.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the stigma. It's, I've had a bit of experience with that.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. That new show on MGM Plus called Beyond.
Yeah.
The second, maybe it's the third. I guess it's the third episode. The beginning of the third episode goes through what I went through in the late '80s and '90s. With stigma, and it's intense, and it's not. I would never recommend to anyone now, even now, that they come out, because I think it is a very fraught thing. I mean, there's just a huge amount of stigma. Like I have family in Texas, and I'm going to go to Texas for Thanksgiving, and I'm going to be snickered at. And it's been like that for all this time, and I just have to live it. You have no choice. You have to live it. And that's what I would say to anybody in this who's has anyone around them has any idea that they've had experiences. You're going to have to live with the stigma, because there's no way to get away from it. And I dream of the day, and may I hopefully be alive when someone finally says, yes, what happened to these people is real, and they should be respected, and they should be treasured because of the knowledge that they're bringing from their direct experience. But so far, that hadn't happened.
It just seems so crazy to me that, we can send people to jail for life based on testimony, but yet when credible people give their testimony, when they feel safe to come forward and they have the confidence to come forward, people in this room, we all know people who won't come forward. It just seems so crazy to me that witnesses and experiences voices are not heard correctly where they should be. And where are the support services? Where are the support services for people's mental health? And I think we have a long way to go to put wraparound care for people. And I really just hope that's where we can push the dial a little bit more forward. And yeah, crazy times, guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just bring it back. I don't want to like throw it back too far in the conversation, but what I was trying to say earlier about using loaded terminology is, I think that's what I was kind of getting at here is just trying to avoid the stigma and the roadblocks that come with using certain terminology that people have an emotional reaction to off the bat, right? So as broad and as like neutral as we can while getting people to accept it, both in the scientific community, religious communities, the general populace. I think this is really important, and just talking about things like they're normal, right? I think that is the most important thing, and not making it a big you know extravagant, like crazy, thing. Because paranormal is just, para means like next to normal. And that is just, paranormal until it becomes normalized, until we have the context, until we have the understanding. And then I think with newer terms and newer data, we'll be able to label these things with something that becomes more accurate and easier for people to understand, regardless of their background.
So you see like an adopting of newer terms as a more accurate portrayal of what's happening, bringing into a stronger reality of the situation as opposed to old, maybe antiquated terms that limited.
I think it's less, yeah, I think it's less isolating
Right.
for certain people that maybe off the bat, well, they didn't come from that background, or they did come from that background, and there's a context there that has been, I guess, through a game of telephone turned into something that maybe it's not all the way, right? And having a new term, having new definitions and data sets that apply to that will be more accurate moving forward. That's what I'm saying.
Look, if you don't
On
mind me
that,
saying something, look at how easier it is to say, I find less sniggering and stigma and, oh my gosh, she's crazy when I use the phrase NHI as opposed to aliens. And I think maybe having more future forward words with less kind of emotive baggage or, salacious headlines attached to it might be part of the process of onboarding to this proposition a bit better. New terminology. I think that's a really good point.
How
Well,
in the way
let
is terminology right now?
I think right now
Um,
it's still there's a lot of stigma attached to a lot of to alien, to
yeah.
demons, to angels, to boogeyman, to poltergeist, to whatever. Like there's a lot of
well, there.
emotional baggage that's attached to all these terms.
I was going to say there is kind of association there to poltergeist activity with Skinwalker Ranch studies and everything that they did under NIDS, and then also again under OSAP. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it
that's
is.
what we describe as that will be still accurate, right? But we will have terms that don't sound, quite as goosebumps, quite as like, fireside story at night, right? Because that people aren't going to accept as easily as like if we have new definitions or new
Maybe
data around it.
that's a theory, though,
Okay,
right?
I think that the terminology from like yesteryear, and there's nothing wrong with this inherently, like demons, angels, like we were discussing, all of these examples of it, they come along with an entire paradigm of beliefs, and they have people attached to it, and a really long history in some cases. Sometimes that can be off putting for people. They don't adopt that. Religious paradigm or whatever it is. So coming up with neutral
I
terms
totally
that
understand.
yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
and
But
I
just to
think that
push
that
back on that
gets
just
in the way.
a tiny
It gets
bit,
in the way.
most of the people in the world are religious, right? So most of the people in the world wouldn't necessarily have a negative reaction to that. So I think if we really look at the statistics of
But not everybody comes from
They
an
they
Abrahamic
will.
religion, for example.
And the religious people that are religious, like the Abrahamic religions, as soon as you call something demons, that shuts people's brains off.
that's not
That
Absolutely.
not
makes
in
it
my
so
experience, not in my experience.
that makes it so that you're not even supposed to study
But
the
who are
thing
you
or look into it at
It
but
all.
who are you
boxes in
speaking
the
for?
phenomenon to
Hold on.
something that it may not actually
But
be.
who are
It
you
boxes
guys?
in the phenomenon.
I
We're
I
speaking for
understand the
everybody, right?
theory, but you're speaking now for like religious people, and that hasn't been my experience. The idea of demons, I mean, a lot of the religious people I know openly speak about these terms, and they seem to have an architecture that is robust and like a lot of time and history into it, where they can start to place these newer concepts, even of NHI. Um,
Same with the Vedic religion, right? They had like asuras, which would be similar to jinn or to demons, right? But they come from a polytheistic background, and their definition of that is much different, right? And there's like all these different trickster gods and things like that in the past, right? And the problem, like I think when we're talking to in this community, a lot of people that come from a Western world, that is accepted and understood. But when people are coming outside of that or coming from a background that's much different, we want to, it's a global phenomenon, right? It's not
absolutely, and
just a
it sounds
Western
Let's
archaic.
phenomenon.
Totally,
guys,
I agree 100%.
Mello's had his hand up for a while here.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me, I'm a little sick. It was really wonderful being at the hearing. I got there hella early to make sure that I could get in, and my people I was collaborating with could get in, which I don't. I did a little space there. It was fun, but anyway, excuse me if I sniffle a bit. I just want to say hi to a few people, well, everyone here, but Nick Pope, it's really cool to be in a space with you. I had a great time meeting you at Contact. Just my name is not always Mellow. My name is Ross Waxman, and that's how I got to know you. So I've been meaning to follow up. Great to see you again, and obviously Whitley to be in a space, and Mario to bring this to a wider global community is of vast importance to all of us. Myself being, among other things, a disclosure activist, like all of us are here. So yeah, okay, let me see. There are a few things, very interesting things were discussed while I put my hand up. So let me see if I can tie it together. Where to begin? Okay, the first with Whitley and Holly and friends talking about the stigmatization, and Whitley expressing his thoughts to and advice to not come out and to not go public as an experiencer. It's something I take very seriously. I've only recently become an experiencer over the last several months. Although I guess in hindsight, now that I understand more the nature of these things, I guess there were elements of it throughout my life that I did not quite understand. But now it's more overt and such. So for me, having had my experiences much more recently in different decades and circumstances than the ones that you went through so famously, I would say, and I'm not as much of an expert on this as you, and I want you to maybe help me understand this better. And I'm also biased, being someone who wants the world to openly collaborate and understand this to the best of our ability, and also experiencers and experience being at the center of everything, not just the phenomenon of these UAPs, UFOs. This will lead to our the second topic of how to classify these things, right, in the best way for the modern age. But for me, I think people should be public about this if they want. I mean, they shouldn't be forced to do it, and maybe it depends on the circumstances. If it's something they're not in the right place for it, or if it was some kind of traumatic experience where they feel like it would be counterproductive to their life. And in certain cases, let's say if you're stuck with people who are going to treat you horribly for going public, then of course I want everyone to thrive in their own way. But with that aside, I mean, my take on it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because you have vast knowledge of all kinds, historical, personal, and as an experiencer. So, I think it's great. I mean, this is your first space, as our friend John was saying. Space is the best place ever. Is a revolutionary thing for especially this topic. Myself and my friends here, we spend almost countless hours talking and sharing our experiences and getting to know it. Oh, you want to jump in there, Whitley? Yeah.
Oh no, I was just listening to what you were saying, and yeah, I think that everyone who's had these experiences has got to look to their own lives to see whether or not they want to go public. And what does that mean? Does it mean telling your family and friends, or does it mean going on TV or the radio or something, or coming out in a space like this for that matter? Uh, and all of those shadings have to be taken into consideration. But I think that I always advise caution, because it makes you vulnerable, and vulnerable in ways that you may not expect. And I've seen a lot of people who have gone public into the public space with this and gotten into trouble with their families, and very unexpected difficulties have occurred. But that said, there are a lot of communities of people who have had this experience that are very rich places to be, where you can come out without broadcasting it to your neighbors and friends, and you can get the benefit of community with other people who have had the experience. So that should be.
Not
Thank you.
to not to take away from your guys' experiences and everything, but let's get back to the hearing and
Yeah, good.
discuss the let's discuss the nuclear silos being messed with and what was stated in Lou Elizondo's statement.
Yeah. If I
I
could
would
tie it together from
also,
that conversation, if you don't mind, I was about to go there. And yeah, but briefly, in terms of just from that one topic to the other, that to me, in terms of what I do and my kind of point of view, these hearings are the most useful things possible to enable more and more experiencers who want to go public, or at least to some communities, voice their truth. And it's validating on the biggest stage possible, right? And for me, at least speaking to my own personal life, I did come out, it did seem that dramatic, but to every single person in IRL, and they're really cool with it. But I've been sort of preparing them over the years as I've researched this topic, focusing on the kind of, people don't like the word, but the nuts and bolts side. And there's a reason that, my friend collaborator Steve Bassett and others, are kind of disciplined and kind of focusing on that for this stage of the rollout, because the normies will be able to accept that better. But now, yeah, onto the nuclear stuff. It was really cool to get to see. I'm sorry, what's his name? Bob Bob was there.
Robert Hastings.
Robert
talking about?
Solace.
Solace, yeah, it's a Solace. Excuse me, I'm a little sleep deprived. Got to meet him, and as part of the sort of the stuff I do, with Sheehan and Bassett, they are very interested, and so am I, in having him and be one of the witnesses at the next hearings. As this nuclear question is something that will also really wake people up in terms of the potential degree of the stakes of what we're talking about here. So anyway, I'll let other people get into that as well.
Well, I mean, the nuclear connection goes all the way back to Roswell. I mean, you had the bomber group there, the only bomb group in the world where the bombs were being stored, where they were testing, where they were working on it. We had the Roswell thing. The nuclear connection goes all the way there. And I think that that's an important thing to come up in the hearing because, once again, defense of our nation, very important. And these craft, these entities, whatever we're calling them, the NHI, they are obviously buzzing all of our nuclear assets, whether it's the missile silos like Salas and others, Malmstrom, other reports, Hastings, or our nuclear subs or our aircraft carriers, Tic Tac, and watching very closely what we're doing with these assets and doing very tight, close surveillance. And so to be able to talk to in an open forum about this, to not only to the world, but to Congress and whatever, to try to realize the stakes that are here and how important it is. I mean, and I know that Nick Pope here, he was in my space at Contact in the Desert talking about the secret that's too terrible to tell. And I'd like to have him kind of go into that maybe, because that's part of this thing. I mean, they are surveilling us. Yes, there's abductions. There's all of these things. I mean, Whitley, is a huge hero to me because his book changed my life, because I also have been having experiences my whole life, not just experiences, but sightings. I mean, every kind of thing under the sun. So it woke me up. But the stigma being real, I didn't, quote unquote, come out until I got onto Twitter almost 4 years ago now, because it was the biggest secret of my life. Not just sightings, but experiences, being able to have people to talk to. But now that it's being openly spoken about in congressional forums and on news channels and podcasts, and like the stigma, it's still there, but it's so reduced that now you can actually talk about it. So talk about stigma, to be able to pull that lid off in the hearing and go deep. I mean, on what's going on and how this problem is being approached, and to out it to the world, is just such a huge step forward. I mean, I know some people are very disappointed because in the UFO community, we have so much deep knowledge of this topic, but like, we didn't get a whole bunch of new stuff, but the world got so much new information that
Absolutely.
this is where it starts the conversations.
So and absolutely. And let me just chime in, if I may, and my apologies. I figured out how to raise my hand on Zoom, but I haven't figured out how to do it on X Spaces yet. So I'm just going to have to.
It's the you press the little heart button and then you just press the hand.
Oh, right. Well, anyway.
Yeah, it's okay.
Welcome to Spaces, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm a technophobe. Let me just speak to that because I think that's important. A couple of things on the nuclear issue. Very appropriately, just literally about an hour before this X Spaces discussion took place, Arrow dropped the unclassified version of their fiscal year 2024 consolidated report to Congress. So you can read it on the Arrow Twitter account. and I just put it on the top of mine. It's 18 pages. I haven't read it yet in detail, obviously, because I was prepping for this event. It does briefly mention the whole nuclear issue, but it doesn't go into much detail. Congress, of course, have asked about this. They've said, look, we've heard from people about this apparent UFO nuclear connection. Is this a thing, or is it just collection bias stemming from the fact that nuclear facilities are self-evidently more heavily surveilled than maybe the average part of the country, or indeed the world? There might be an answer to that, or at least an attempt to answer it on Tuesday, because again, I don't know how many people listening in here have seen this yet, but the good news is there's going to be another congressional hearing next week, and this time it's in the Senate and not the House, and it's going to be it's a subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee. And interestingly, and I know this isn't going to go well with some people because it tells you something about how they're viewing it, but it's in the Emerging Threats and Capability Subcommittee. But
right.
So that's scheduled, and I'm expecting the hearing is about Arrow and its activities. Obviously, they were criticized roundly by a number of whistleblowers and witnesses. They are now under new leadership. It remains to be seen which way they're going to go, but we might get some clues. It's a closed, classified briefing, but after that, they are going into a public session. So watch out for that. News is just breaking about that, and it's next Tuesday.
So, Nick,
thank you for the update on that. Yeah, if it's relevant to this, I was just going to ask a question. So go for it.
I just wanted Tim to clarify the statement, talking about, the secret that's too terrible to be kept, because that's the whole point of this is all of these secrets have been kept, so many secrets, and trying to somehow untangle this web of secrets is so complicated and convoluted. And so how do we get through this tangled web?
Yeah, my point about this, I gave a presentation, and it's out there free to view on the internet somewhere. If you look for a secret too terrible to be told, I said, look, you can understand the president of the United States going before the nation and saying, my fellow Americans, people of the world, we are not alone. Under no definition of classified information that I've seen could that statement in and of itself be classified. Now, some aspects of an extraterrestrial presence might be classified. For example, the technology. You wouldn't want that falling into the hands of an adversary. And almost anything that involves the generation of high amounts of energy, as viable interstellar travel almost certainly would, could be weaponized. But, you could say, look, we're ring fencing that. We're not going to talk to you about the tech because it can be weaponized and we don't yet understand it and we don't want to put it out there. But we can tell you that we're not alone. The fact that that hasn't happened suggests to me that there's something in and of itself about this presence that is, as I say, it's dark side. It's a secret too terrible to be told. I don't know what that might be, but I've just put that out there really as almost a thought experiment to kickstart a conversation.
So Douglas MacArthur, who was a part of the IPU, or George C. Marshall's IPU, which is also known as the Interplanetary Phenomena Unit. Very interesting that was an organization that was under the Army Air Forces that was exposed by NICAP years ago. Douglas MacArthur has a speech known as the Duty Honor Speech, where he talks about, at the end of the speech, he says that the next war will be interplanetary. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah, well, I think the secret too terrible to be kept was that there was a deal made, and the deal was there was a trade that was made, and that there is an expiration on this date, and people can't handle knowing that, they're letting this happen. They're letting people like me and Whitney be taken. They're letting this happen because, when we all know the story about Eisenhower supposedly having the meeting, and just my theory is that it was a soft surrender. that we had to relent. When it was after the 52 flyovers, they made a very, very clear threat display, and then they had their negotiations, and a deal was struck. And if the people knew that there was a deal struck with alien entities that will trade technology and whatever, and will let you basically, kidnap and experiment on a certain number of the population, as long as you're not revealing yourselves to the world, that's a pretty dark and terrible secret as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so Stubblebean basically told me that did happen, and that they broke the treaty, and that they started essentially creating bases that were not logged or were not clearly defined.
The
And
aliens broke the treaty. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
yeah, yes, correct. And they started building bases that were not any way formed logged with the government or with the organization that was overseeing this, which, from what I was told, it was the 54/12 group or special group, which a lot of other people call MJ12, PI 40, 40s committee, whatever you want to call them. That's who was kind of in charge of this issue. And apparently the NHI breached this treaty in multiple different forms of ways, with building bases submerged under mountains and on the beds of the oceans, in mesas, in volcanoes, whatever which areas. And we started raiding them in the 1980s. But in the 1970s, these were first kind of discovered by Pat Price. And in 1982, when Stubblebean was in INSCOM and was head of INSCOM, they had a operation known as Project 8200, and they were trying to confirm the same bases that Pat Price had given the locations to, and they used remote viewing to do this. And they were trying to basically confirm the same information that Pat Price had given them about these alien bases or NHI bases. And then immediately following that, in 1983, they created the ATP group. Stubblebean ordered John B. Alexander to create the ATP group. And essentially what they did was they built further sensors to detect these objects. And they kind of started expanding, I guess. The NHI did.
So they went against an agreement. They sounds like they tricked us.
Yes, that's what I was told. Yes.
Yeah,
Tricksters.
I was told not by Stubblebine, but by someone else who probably had as much information as Stubblebine did, that they regarded this agreement as open sesame, basically, that we said yes, and instead of 1,500 people being experimented on, it turned out to be hundreds of thousands, and it wasn't experiments, it's something else, because the taking of so much sexual material, it can only be for one thing, and that is to create something.
Hybridization.
Well, if it's hybridization, it could be, or it could just be that they're creating people and raising them in the context of their own world. And my wife and I were shown a baby back in 1986, late 86. And, we had we didn't, there was nothing we could do about it, but it looked like a
Whitley,
normal
are you
baby. It
saying
looked like a human
like they're
baby.
cloning Like they're cloning, like
Well,
they
no, I
take your
mean, I think
sperm,
if
they
you've got
clone you, and then they have a copy of
no,
you that
no,
they
you
can
don't need.
then.
There's nothing to do with the cloning. If you've got sperm and eggs, you can make babies.
Okay, so yeah, okay.
And if you have DNA, if you have like the the genetic sequence, you could basically customize that to make it whatever. It doesn't have to follow your exact
Right.
genetics, because we have the programming to be kind
Or
of
they could mix
whatever.
their DNA in, and what you've got now in the in the wild, there are people out there who have fluent telepathic abilities, and they are really weird. They are not like you and me at all, and they don't like us. They are ferocious. They're very, very. They have uh, autism, and to the point they can't look in your eyes. I mean, I've been with these people, and they have. They're in, and there's a thing out. I'm going to interview the guy on my show soon, who has discovered that there are autistic people, not any evidence of any kind of hybrids, who also have telepathic abilities. And I think what these aliens did was they made these people telepathic so they could communicate that way, but in the process they cannot speak. The ones I have encountered can only make just guttural noises. They can't speak, and they live in, I don't know where they live. I mean, God knows where they live, but
So one person you should have on your show, don't mean to interrupt, but Diane Hennessy is studying this. She's a scientist, and she might be like a psychiatrist or something, but she's studying autism, and there's actually a podcast that was featuring her kind of documentary style called Telepathy
yeah,
Tapes.
she's the one
Everyone
I'm
should check
trying to
that
get a
out.
hold
It's
of,
amazing.
actually.
Yeah, she's I could put you in
Please
touch with
do.
her if you want.
Yes.
I'll I'll send you
Yeah,
an
it's
email.
Well, you
just, you can
notice.
email me. It's just Whitley@Strieber.com. Anyone can email me, and I answer most emails.
I got a quick question for the people who were at the event yesterday. Was there indeed an audible?
Yeah, I think the other aspect of this that because there's been people that have talked about them walking among us, right? Which could be like the hybrid type thing. But one thing that I've considered is we're getting to the point where we're able to sort of like we've done cloning. Now we're getting to the point of like AI, AGI, ASI, and I think it's very possible that there could be human-looking clones that are just programmable, right, or something like that. I think we need to broaden our horizons as well
Well, Michael
as
Gold
our
said
knowledge
Michael
evolves.
Gold said yesterday at the hearing that we could be shocked and they might be AI, right? So I mean that's a kind of a good segue to get back to discussing about the hearing.
Well, yeah, at the hearing, the topic of hybrids was brought up by Lauren Boebert, who, and you see all
Right.
four witnesses completely like shut that, like you could tell, like that's just a no-go topic. They were like, nope.
When Mace said the
Well, I would actually like to get your guys's,
Asap,
because
can
we
you hear
have
me?
you, John, we
Asap can't
got
hear me.
Alsop,
Mello, Missile Man, Darcy, all of you
can you hear
guys.
timeline?
Sorry.
UFO
What
timeline keeps
one at a
talking, and
time,
I
Oh
one at
no,
a
I
time,
okay.
can't.
one at a time.
One at a time, Lynn.
Okay, I think the issue is
Well, I
Osap.
was just going to say,
Osap, I don't think
we have some of
timeline.
these guys that were there at the hearing. I would love to hear some perspectives of maybe not just because we saw what was happening in the hearing, but not necessarily hearing the conversations before or afterwards. What I've heard that there were like that's where it was really at. So I want to hear you guys' perspectives on that while we're still
I will
here.
say real quick, I did attend an after.
And sorry if I was interrupting
Yeah,
anybody.
if you hear me, I'm just chiming in that after the hearings, I attended a UAP Disclosure Fund meeting that was held by some people linked to Lou Elizondo and Representative Eric Burleson did a speech there talking about how they're really in a good position in the Republican Party to go after this sort of secrecy that's gone rogue within the military and, let's say, kind of the deep state government. And it was really refreshing to hear because it seemed like all these congressmen and congresswomen on both the Democratic and the Republican side are ready to engage this secrecy and try and like pry it out of the hands of the old deep state sort of military industrial complex, but that's been running this issue and keeping it all away from the public.
Okay, it seems like a lot of people can't hear Darcy. Darcy, would you mind dropping down and coming back up? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no problem.
I didn't attend any sort of after party except the rally after that New Paradigm did, and then Missile Man and I and Nick Gold and some others, all the New Paradigm people went and just sort of had a dinner and chit chatted after.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear
you.
Okay,
and
cool.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like the buzz in the room was that history was being made, that we finally have enough people who know things, and they made it clear they've had classified briefings, and we have an administration coming in that seems to want to kind of tear down those walls and get at this thing, and try to wrangle control back into the hands of the politicians, instead of having it be out of control in the in the three-letter agencies, the DoD, the aerospace companies. Of course, Lockheed came up so many times, but there's a lot more than Lockheed, and so I feel like I for one felt like this was really an incredible moment. Like we're finally starting to push through. And we've had the legends here, Whitney. I never thought we would be here. So it was a topic going on all throughout the line. Everyone was sharing back and forth. I didn't have any sort of real behind the scenes insider access. So it was more like just like the UFO Twitter people, so many people there. And then interacting with all of these people. So it just feels like this was different. Like we're finally starting to get to a point where we might actually be able to start wrestling control back into the people's hands. And I, for one, just feel honored and lucky to have been there on the ground, and to see Darcy, see all of these people who were there. There's quite a few of us in this space right now who were all there. Steven right there was there. Darcy, Mello, Missile Man, Nick. I mean, it was a who's who of UFO Twitter. It's a who's who of insiders, and there was other Congress people that were coming in and listening, that I don't know if you could see on TV. They didn't speak, but they were coming in and listening. And there was a lot of buzz running around with the staffers and people handing stuff off, and a lot of whispering going on. And you could just feel that there's finally something starting to change.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Now we got Darce back up here. I missed what you were saying, and I know a few others did.
Sure.
If you want to just briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to just speak to a few things. Being on the ground there was really cool. As John Strader said, it was great to just interact with so many people that you talk to online who are passionate about this subject and want to know more and really want the secrecy to open up that's been kept from the public by majority from the powers that be. And when we talk about the powers that be, we really mean like the deep state government. In a way, that's like the DoD, the intelligence agencies that have been collecting data on this phenomenon for decades, and they're allowed to stay in power longer than any presidential term. So they really keep that secrecy tight and away from the public. And this hearing was really a way to challenge that, to have congressmen and congresswomen put forth to really question that secrecy. They spoke up about it. Nancy Mace said there were people that have contacted me and said they do not want us to have this congressional hearing. There are people that are being threatened who are coming forward to be quote unquote whistleblowers to discuss the secrecy with us, who came from, that establishment of the DoD or intelligence community apparatus. And, one of those people quite famously is Lou Elizondo. Now, there is controversy over this individual. People have been saying very, let's say, conspiracy-laden things about him and challenging his truth and authenticity. I think that's wrong, because he's actually turning his back on that secrecy and trying to pry it open by letting us, the public, know that there is a control mechanism. There is a intelligence and DoD, truth embargo regarding this situation. And so he was one of the people speaking, and so was Tim Gallaudet. You have Mike Gold, who's had plenty of experience at NASA. And of course, Shelley, as some people fondly call Michael Schellenberger, who published the Immaculate Constellation paper and really is trying to push the, secrecy open from what the collection side, the data systems from above in the sky and in low Earth orbit, the satellites and stuff, or the dishes and the radar and listening systems that we have on the ground. That is what the Immaculate Constellation system is. It's a listening apparatus set up of technology, a network of technology that apparently has been tracking UAP incursions for a long time. And, I'll just say, I was invited by Lou Elizondo to the UAP Disclosure Fund meeting at 5:30. We got to hear from Representative Eric Burleson, who's a Republican leader who's very excited about this new Republican administration, because it's the first time that they've had many people that were put in places of, let's say, control of the UAPD DA, which is a legislative tool that was put forth to Congress to try and start asking the right questions and leading us towards disclosure from a legislation purpose, to then turn around once that act gets fully passed in a more effective way to call in members of the intelligence community or call in members of the DoD to question them in secure environments what really is going on. And something the UAP Disclosure Fund is also doing, which is very cool, is they have people like Ivan. If you look him up, he's one of the main lawyers for the UAP Disclosure Fund, who will voluntarily give free whistleblower protection legal advice to any new people that want to testify in the future to Congress that this is a reality. This secrecy is being kept from the American people and the world by majority, and that they want to talk to reveal more of the secrecy and reveal more of the data. So I think the UAP Disclosure Fund is awesome. Obviously, they're actually involved in protecting people like Lou Elizondo, David Grush, and these other whistleblowers who've come forward already. So they're creating an environment where more people feel safe to come forward. And I think, with Representative Eric Burleson talking at the meeting, he was just saying, I will remain skeptical about some of this stuff, but he says other things have convinced me so far that there are so many facts to deal with UAP activity historically that it can't be ignored anymore, and that we need to actually get more data from the intelligence and DoD community to present to the public and to have Congress better read into this issue so we can move forward and understand our reality better, really.
Couldn't
I
I was
I
just going to
think
say I couldn't agree more. Estimate has their hand up, and it's been up for a while.
Hey, what's up? Happy to be here. I'm actually kind of surprised that this is going on. I think this topic has been avoided by a lot of people. We kind of have like an insular community, and it's great to branch out. I'll just offer a couple of things. I'll skip the introduction of who I am. One, right? Obviously, the thing to understand is that this government has been taking this very seriously since the early 40s, right? And anyone that tells you otherwise doesn't know their history. And in order to understand that, in order to avoid some of the pitfalls that this topic has kind of fallen into for the last 3 decades or so, I think it's really important to understand the documented history, either by historians who have studied the subject extensively, or going down your own rabbit hole and looking into documents yourself, and you'll see that, like, you'll see for yourself that something did happen. Two, some of those pitfalls I do want to talk about. I'll disagree with Darcy a little bit there, respectfully. I think you should question everything that comes with this topic, because this topic has been a subject that has been used by counterintelligence for quite some time, whether it's by us, our own adversaries. So I think it's really important for people who are interested in this to do your own research, follow the people that you think provide the information that is necessary for you to make your own decision, and just trust nobody except yourself, because this topic has been used and abused and will continue to be used and abused until we take agency as to like how to basically investigate it and come to any sort of consensus as a community and beyond that. Other than that, that's all I really have to say. Again, I'm really happy to see this topic kind of expand and blow up in the last couple of days. Last few years, really, I think it's been a really tremendous push by certain individuals that some are named and some aren't named. And I think to get to this point has been just monumental. It's been incredible, and I think hopefully, armed with a certain amount of knowledge and discernment, I think this topic has just room to grow. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
I saw Whitley had his hand
I
up,
did.
and then Dove
I
after Whitley.
Okay, yeah, I did have it up, and I've been trying to figure out how to get it to go down, and I have done that. Okay, what I think we should not ever forget is that 14 successive administrations, including the Carter administration, which started out with a promise to spill the beans, and the Obama administration, where this was discussed extensively for years, and not to mention the George W. Bush administration, where there was a meeting in October before the administration ended, where a whole bunch of people from all kinds of different levels of the defense community got together and separated into committees, everyone going into it thinking our committee is going to recommend disclosure. Everyone came out of it saying we shouldn't disclose. Why not? Until we have some kind of an idea of what is actually preventing this, uh, uh, we I don't see how we can hope to really make much progress, because the congressional committees can make all the demands they want, but if there's something there that, like, for example, if this presence is more involved than it appears to us on the outside, maybe it's calling the shots in these administrations and saying, you can't do this. We're not going to let you. In other words, there could be a higher power for all we know. So, I've thought and thought about this, and I think the only way to do this is to continue to press, and eventually maybe we'll either find out we're never going to know, or it'll crack open. I hope it'll crack open.
I
But,
love that,
we can't
Whitley.
forget the intensity of this secret.
Right. So when was that? When was that commission
That
held?
meeting, those meetings,
Was
was
that in
October.
1960s?
No, the meeting, the George W. Bush meeting that you're referring to, Hal Puthoff has talked about it both privately, and I heard him at the last Seoul conference talking about it. So I don't think it's.
Oh, that was 2004. Okay.
Yeah,
There was also a congressional secret briefing that took place in the 1960s that Roscoe Hillenkoetter, the first former CIA director, talked about in a newspaper. It said saucer data suppressed, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
under it said about the
So
hearing.
it's happened before, and I was involved in the '90s with the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, who were probing around trying to get uh, the NSA to square with them about this, and having no luck, and they got me to help them formulate questions, which didn't work either. So, in any case, um, so it's been around, and early on in our discussion, we were talking about the secret to this terrible secret that's at the heart of this, and it's there. It has to be. 14 administrations don't hold something secret across all of those different personalities, all of those different political eddies, different parties, and so forth, without there being an absolutely extraordinary, overwhelming reason.
Well, even Obama on one of
Okay, I
those
would
talk
like an
shows.
opportunity to speak, John,
Okay,
respectfully.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I thank you so much. I appreciate what you're saying, and I thought,
Yeah, Dove had her hand up for a while. We
thanks,
should go to
Asap.
her.
I've thought a lot about what could be going on with the phenomenon.
I can't hear Dove.
I think that you've probably heard me say this anyways, Osap. So I just want to say I've thought a lot about what could be at the heart of this issue that we have not disclosed it. I think part of me thinks maybe, yeah, the reason is greater than any human. We don't have the power to do it, or it will or could potentially incite some kind of retaliation or reaction. Or is it also possible that the last 14 administrations have come to realize and learn after they're sworn in as presidents that there has been a military industrial governmental complex that's all one big ball of yarn mixed up that has been covering up uh, the presence of NHI since, the 1933 in the Magenta case, and that in the name of that secrecy and in the name of exploiting technology to further our war capabilities, that we have done some awful things as humans, and that people have gotten hurt, people have gotten killed in the name of this secrecy, and that every single taxpayer in the United States has had their money essentially taken away from them, or they've been lied to about what their money is being spent on, because a lot of these government contractors use federal dollars to do some of their work. But anyways, I have a suspicion that it's not any one thing. I think it's a couple things, and that government secrecy in and of itself, covering up their own asses, is a big part of it. Thank you.
I just wanted to dovetail on Dove's thing there. I'm sorry I jumped in front of you. All I was going to say is exactly what you were going to say, but just like it has leaked out, like Obama, jokingly at one point said during an interview, "Well, it can't come out because the aliens won't let me tell you, like they're in charge."
I frankly think that's
No
correct.
lies. Yeah, I think he said it in a joking way, but I think that was low key
Yep.
Exactly.
disclosure.
It was no joke. I am with you on that.
Well, I also think that they are opening the door. I think that's what this is all about. And we sense it on some levels, probably we know it. And this door is going to be opened. And, uh, I heard about something that John von Neumann, probably nobody remembers him. He was a
Oh, I do.
Yeah, great. So, for those who don't, he was a physicist who was involved in this in the early days. And I'm not going to pussyfoot around about it. He was involved. And he was also an early expert in quantum theory, which meant he knew something about quantum indeterminacy, a lot about it, in fact. And he had a fear that the human mind, was what was basically keeping the door closed. That if we didn't know about them, they couldn't enter our reality. But once we did know about them, we could never get rid of them. And I went into this fairly deeply at one point with someone who had known him, and I wrote a short story about it called The Open Doors, which takes place during the time he was passing away. He died of liver cancer fairly early. And it's the idea that once some kind of critical mass is reached and enough people have these beings in their reality the same as we have cars and each other and dogs and the whole world, then they are going to come through that door into our whole reality and change it in an instant and cause their understanding of the world to be what we all have to live by. And if that's the secret, then you can't blame this is a dangerous time. And what worries me is we don't know the parameters. We don't know why. Obama will not. He says, yeah, the aliens are forcing us to keep the secret, but why? What's the danger here?
So, so we're nearing the 8 o'clock Eastern point, and let's just do two more people with their hands up and close things up. Dove and then Mello.
Okay, real quick, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to read something really quick, and I was going to mention this before, but Schellenberger's document, The Immaculate Constellation, 11 to 12 pages, I think it does a really great job of actually summing up a lot of what has been talked about here. It touches on injuries. It has a lot of great example of sightings and with the military and stuff like that, like credible observers. And the end of it is so great. So I did want to read this. It's the conclusion. It's the last paragraph. And I think it sums it up nicely. It says, the official disclosure of the existence of non-human intelligences and their presence on Earth is a pivotal moment in human history. The nature of this information is of such incomparable relevance to the public good that it demands to be shared. Some may object and say that disclosure at this time possesses too many risks. To them, it must be said that we will never be able to predict how individuals, families, communities, and nations will react to revelations of such a magnitude. Moving forward, we must guard against the lure of authoritarian solutions justified by expediency and appeals to national security. The good in humanity will always triumph through time, and it is in moments of crisis that our capacities for achieving the extraordinary are discovered. Be not afraid. I just think that's nice.
Yeah, I like that. I wish we had more time. Thanks for wake. I was about to take a nap, and then I saw this going on. So I'm just waking up, but I'm glad to at least catch some of it. This could go on forever. This conversation with all these amazing legends and experts. Whitley, thank you for sharing that. I kind of want to dig in just a little bit more. If the NHI won't let this come out, right? Why are they presenting themselves more than ever? Why are they allowing the truth embargo to gradually fade away? Why are they letting the hearings happen? Why was Obama allowed to make a movie about it?
I think they are letting it come out. I think they're letting it ooze out. And I also have another thought. I think Obama and probably George W. both know this secret. I think people should go to them. I think we should ask them what they know. That we never do.
I'm working
I
on
don't
it.
know that George W. Bush would be one to disclose. He seems like he's pretty secretive. He's said publicly that he wouldn't tell too. So
That also
Well, and
implies the
Obama.
president.
I would love to get them subpoenaed
But
or
that also
something.
implies
Though
the president would know, right? I mean, I think history has shown us time and time again that anytime they do inquire, they're kind of, kicked back down, and it doesn't happen. So what does that tell you?
I think that George W. Bush is a
I do kind of want to
specific.
get Galactic in here just because he's been trying to speak for a while. He was stuck in limbo. He's super knowledgeable. He would have some good comments real quick.
Sure.
Thank you,
Yeah.
man.
Let's bring him in. Let's bring him in for the last kind of statement, and then end the space. I'm being told to wrap things up.
Okay, no
God, yeah,
worries.
this is really quick. I was just going to add on to what Whitley and Dove were talking about. With Whitley talking about the von Neumann's idea of kind of whenever we realize they're there, then they can have an entry point to kind of get in. Nick Redfern kind of has some reporting on Stack 5 and the Collins Elite, which Elizondo has talked about a little bit. But there was like a joint program between the Department of Defense and NASA. And it even mentions von Neumann in the title of several of the papers Redfern mentions. And one of the papers is titled Entry Points, How Do We Keep Them Closed? And it was basically about they were being worried about an invasion happening. And they had like certain entry points that they wanted to prevent people from coming in through. But on top of that, within the same research that Redfern produced, the Collins Elite specifically was writing papers with the theory that they wanted to like have a mass indoctrination campaign to basically convert everyone to fundamentalist Christianity, thinking it's all like demonic and stuff. And that's where you get like the Project Bluebeam, like conspiracy theories about how they were going to put like a hologram of Jesus in the sky and do like a mass conversion, because they thought that by managing people's perceptions and belief systems, they could have a way to manage whatever Elizondo is talking about eventually happens by like a mass authoritarian, like exactly what's mentioned in kind of the Immaculate Constellation report about having like an authoritarian solution. That's exactly what the Collins Elite was kind of wanting to do by like a mass indoctrination of the population. And they kind of got pushback from that, pushback on that from the Stack 5 group. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
So if you've
to
got to close
all of
it
our
up,
speakers and
I
go ahead.
was going to
What were you
say,
gonna say?
I was just going to say, so we have this huge audience, and I know you have to go, but we should open a space and keep this rolling because this is amazing. And thank you so much for doing this. And hopefully you guys will come back and do it again, maybe after the Senate hearing. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is great.
I mean, if somebody wants to spin it up, then yeah, we can continue. But yeah, we have to jump off of Mario's.
Well,
Well, I'm awake
enjoyed
now.
it thoroughly, and thank you.
Yeah, we'll do more. I think we'll do more with Mario too, because yeah, there's interest.
Whoever's going to start the space, throw the link in the comments of this space because those don't disappear.
I'm caffeinated. I'm happy to host if that's okay.
I got to go, so I can't host. But thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you
and
guys.
Great
Thank you so
conversation.
much.
Thanks,
Cool.
everybody.
Thanks for
Mellow
Have a
having
good
hope.
me.
night.
Thank you.
Take care.